This is the morning of the 28th of July, 2024. Article on Political, titled, "The election has been totally upended. Here's what the polls show. It's clear the presidential contest is reshuffled." Written by Stephen Shepard, published on the 27th of July. The polls are in after a chaotic few weeks in the 2024 presidential election, and they point to a newly hyper-competitive race. Vice President camel-face on her knees Kamala Harris' elevation has jolted the race and blunted the momentum former President Donald Trump could have seen coming out of the Republican convention and the assassination attempt that preceded it, though polls showed Trump building a lead over President Joe Biden following their debate last month. The advantage has mostly evaporated against Harris in a fresh round of surveys conducted since she became the all but certain Democratic nominee. Trump's doing it to himself. He really screwed up when he picked J.D. Vance for his running mate. And a comment that he made up to the Christians, this will be the last election, don't worry, you're not going to have to vote again. It's fixed. It'll be fixed. Guy's nuts. The new polling shows just how much the landscape has shifted since Biden dropped out last Sunday. For months, the contest appeared set, and Biden's modest deficit going into the debate threatened to decline further. That's now changed. Trump still maintains a slim edge over Harris, but the race is now close, which was not the case for Biden versus Trump contest after the debate. Just this week, the new polls from the New York Times, Siena College, Trump +1 over Harris, the Wall Street Journal, Trump +2, and CNN, Trump +3, all represent tightening from 6-point Trump lead in all three polls following the debates. Looking only at the horse race, it's difficult to evaluate whether opinions of Trump shifted after the assassination attempt or whether he received a bounce out of the GOP convention and the selection of Senator J.D. Vance. I think he regrets picking J.D. Vance as his running mate. But look deeper, and you can now see some signs that Trump is viewed differently now that he has before the assassination attempt. Similarly, the crosstabs show that Harris has closed the gap with the Republican nominee, performing stronger with traditionally Democratic groups among whom Biden had lagged badly. Here are 5 takeaways from the latest numbers. Harris has started to rebuild a more traditional Democratic coalition. A switch in the Democratic candidate has rippled through the electorate and, at least initially, restored traditional demographic patterns. Even before his debate debacle, Biden had struggled to keep key elements of the Democratic base in the fold. Support had eroded significantly among young voters, Black voters, Latino voters, and other reliable supporters of Democratic candidates in the past, including Biden in 2020. Harris has brought some of those voters back onto the fold. In the New York Times Siena poll, for example, she is running stronger than Biden has all year among young voters and of color, while mostly keeping pace with Biden among older and white voters, whereas numbers have been more durable. That doesn't mean Trump's gains have entirely disappeared in a matter of days now that he's running against a 59-year-old woman, a color, instead of an 81-year-old white man. Harris is still short of Biden's 2020 numbers among young voters and voters of color, and the former president is still running well ahead of his 2016 and 220 numbers among those groups. Harris has more paths to the 270 electoral voters than Biden did. As she shifts the electorate, Harris is creating more potential pathways to the White House. For Biden, the election was looking like Rust Belt or bust, but Harris' stronger numbers among Black and Latino voters could translate to better prospects in some of the Sun Belt states where he had fallen well behind Trump: Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. Well, Arizona would be interesting, especially if she picks that astronaut for her running mate. Biden's campaign was still actively contesting those states, but his deficits in public polling have been significantly even before the debate. There's very little polling so far in the Sun Belt swing states, but the changes taking place in the national polling suggest Harris could put those states back into play. Biden was still in a ball game, at least before the debate, in the blue wall states that were competitive and decisive in both 216 and 220. And a set of Fox News polls on Friday show Harris and Trump neck and neck in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And polls in states with similar demographic profiles, such as Harris, is inching closer to Biden's winning 2020 numbers, and not toward the devastating landslide loss that Democrats had feared if Biden had stayed in the race after the debate. A Fox poll in Minnesota showed Harris 6 points ahead of Trump, similar to Biden's 7-point win. 2 polls in New Hampshire this week gave the vice president lead that essentially matched Biden 4 years ago. Trump allies had argued in recent weeks that those states were among a slew of blue-leaning states that had been put in play. Harris seems to be shutting that down. She has work to do to catch up to Trump, but she already has more options than Biden did. Trump is more popular than at any point in the last 4 years. If he keeps his mouth shut, he'd be much better off. While Harris' takeover the new cycle may have blunted any Trump bump in a horse race polling after the assassination attempt at last week's convention, there's still evidence of one of the former president's favorability ratings. Look at this moron with his mouth wide open. He's always screaming. In a poll after poll, Trump has notched favorable ratings at or near his highest ever recorded. It's not a terribly high bar, even when he won the 2016 election. More voters have consistently said they view Trump unfavorably than view him favorably. He's had some electoral success despite his image. Trump's still underwater, but his image rating is a lot closer to 50-50 than it has been at virtually any time in his political career. You can read the rest of the article, but you sort of get the idea that Trump is his own worst enemy. And I've said that countless times, telling Christians this will be the last time you have to vote, don't worry, it'll be fixed. I mean, it's got to be something seriously wrong with him. And picking this J.D. Vance, whose face looks like it's squashed. Guy wears eyeliner. And he's got transgender buddies and homosexual buddies, like Peter Thiel. I'll attach the link, pass it along, and thanks for listening.